Hi, everyone, and welcome to Open Your Eyes to the Universe. I'm Gabrielle Martin, your host for this evening. If you're joining our program for the first time, Open Your Eyes to the Universe is a series of contemporary talks and conversations, open-eyed meditations, and interviews with people who inspire and uplift others by sharing their wisdom, their insights, and their experiences to co-create a better world. And as we begin, the Youniverse team would like to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet. We pay our respects to the elders of the past, the present, and the future, and we acknowledge their spiritual connection to country. And we also acknowledge and respect the wise elder within us all and the collective wisdom of all of those here this evening. Last month on Youniverse, we were in the company of professional dancer Associate Professor Jamie Redfern, based in Brisbane, Australia, and dance and fitness instructor Judy Rich from Calgary in Canada. And their conversation was on movement and meditation. They were exploring the connection between the inner world and the process of dance and movement. They shared the interplay between themselves within the emotional landscape and the physical and the body-soul connection as they've experienced it in their careers in the world of dance. And you can check that episode out if you missed it, and Jan will put the link in the chat box for you. Well, here we are now, and we're nearly at the end of October, and I'm mindful that we are days away from COP27, the Climate Change Conference. It starts on the 6th of November, and it concludes on the 8th of November, the 18th of November in Egypt. And we've been reflecting on what does it really take to care for our Earth, and what's the connection between my consciousness and our global environment. Tonight here on Youniverse, we're going to showcase a practice of sustainable yogic agriculture, which demonstrates the invisible yet tangible link between our thoughts and their impact on matter, and more specifically, food crops. We're joined by Dr. Tamasin Ramsey, and she'll be discussing her in-the-field research with us on sustainable yogic farming. Using Raj Yoga meditation as taught by the Brahma Kumaris, this ancient meditation technique was deployed and still is deployed for enhancing crop performance in farming. And her research describes a visit to Maharashtra and Goa in India during 2013. So that's just about 20 years ago now, by representatives from the Brahma Kumaris Rural Development Wing, and the Office to the United Nations. Her research explores the use of sustainable yogic agriculture and how the methods are being adopted with significant tangible and social benefits. Now, we've known about the power of positive vibrations for decades, possibly centuries, and the recent work of Masaru Emoto from Japan bears witness to this. He claimed that the human consciousness could affect the molecular structure of water, and perhaps you know his work. His experiments involved exposing glasses of water to various words and pictures or music, and then freezing the water and examining the frozen crystals under a microscope. Look, he hypothesized that water shapes itself differently when exposed to different thoughts, energies, and emotions. And this is because when we express any emotion, the vibrations emitted from our body coincide with different molecular matter around us, including water, shaping its energy in a symmetrical sense. Similarly, Dr. Tamasin Ramsey noted in her field research that crops can grow healthily using the power of positive vibrations and peaceful thoughts from our own minds. Let me tell you about Tamasin. She's a researcher trained in medical anthropology, and she has a background in paramedic science and the arts. She's also been a daily meditation practitioner with the Brahma Kumaris since 1984, and she's also a notable scholar on the movement. She represented the Brahma Kumaris at the United Nations between 2010 and 2014, during which she learned about the power of spiritual technologies in solving global problems. As her interest in matters of the spirit have deepened, so too has her interests in other species and the world of matter on which we all depend. Tamasin now works as a senior policy advisor for the Parliament of Victoria and works to integrate values and legislation in ways that benefit people, animals, and our planet. The complex and enduring interrelationship between the physical and spiritual worlds is what sparked Tamasin's interest in sustainable yogic agriculture. She says, whether one is an environmentalist, a spiritual practitioner, or a scientist, the laws that govern nature are irrefutable. As a human collective, we've used nature as a commodity and as a resource for our own gain, without considering the consequences. And now it's time to give back to nature, allowing her to replenish, so we may once again live in a sustainable, biodiverse, and abundant world. Sounds great, doesn't it? Tamasin, it's lovely to have you with us tonight. And what a groundbreaking, or should I say, a ground healing piece of research that you've championed. And we'd love to hear more about sustainable yogic agriculture from you this evening.
Thanks, Gabrielle. What a great introduction. Gosh, yogic farming. I was reflecting on how I started, where my interest really started with that. And I think it began actually when I was a small child. I grew up from the ages of 0 to 6 or 7, living in a very simple house with my parents on top of a mountain on about 300 acres outside of a small country town. And I was an only child, although I did have friends, but they lived a long way away. So my daily playground was literally the forest. And my playmates were other species, animals, insects, birds, and the trees and the landscapes. And I didn't know that was unusual until I got back to Melbourne and discovered that not every 8-year-old talks to animals when they're at school. So I kind of let that go. And I stayed interested in meditation practices and reflective practices, always interested in matters of the spirit, even as a child. And then when I was about 18, I came across the Brahma Kumaris and started it as a reflective practice, as a meditation practice for my own benefit, self-understanding, and because I wanted to be a better person in the world. But it wasn't until later that I started to think, it's fine to do it for myself, but how can we do it in a way that's really practical? And this thought came to mind when I worked as a paramedic. I was really interested in the health and well-being of people. But I thought, what makes us resilient during times of trauma? What's the other stuff, apart from the clinical stuff, that really matters, that really affects our experience, shapes the world around us, and helps us shape the world for others? So that took me on to into medical anthropology, and then I did research in India. And it was around that time I came across the practice of sustainable yogic agriculture. And it was interesting because, often, even at university, I was taught, well, there's the practical side, the logical, rational side, and then there's the spiritual side, and they're considered very separate. But the more I studied my own spiritual practice and the more I open to that in my academic research, the more I learned about Advaita Vedanta, on which the Brahma Kumaris has that history, and that's a non-dualistic practice, meaning we don't really say this or that, we say this and that. So it prevents compartmentalization. And I also found out more about Indigenous practices in Australia, and that's also very non-dualistic. Everything is included. There's no separation. There's no siloing off. There's no bracketing out. And so it was when I was doing my research in India that I started hearing these mutterings about yogiketi, which is what they call it there, which is sustainable yogic agriculture or farming. And it was very informal how it began. So it began in Maharashtra, in Sirohi, and not Sirohi, anyway, something like that. And there was as I understand the story, there was a young brother there who had been bequeathed some land by one of his ancestors, father or grandfather. And it was about an acre, and he couldn't grow anything. It was dry, it was barren, no seeds would germinate. Like, it was just, he was really distressed because he came from a farming family. He's like, what do I do? It had had chemicals on it. It had had bad seed put on it. It was really bad. So the sisters at the centre said, look, if you can't grow anything, why don't we just go and meditate there? Sit there and meditate. And he said, well, no, okay, fine, do what you want to do, but nothing grows there. So anyway, one of the sisters said, look, let's do it for 6 months. Every morning and every evening, or just go there for half an hour, morning and evening for 6 months. It can't hurt. Let's see what happens. We're going to meditate anyway. We'll just do it there. So they did that. And in 6 months, the soil had softened. It had become porous. It had become richer. And nothing had been done. Like, for, I'm not sure how many years, for 3 years, I think it was, it had been the same. Nothing would grow there. After 6 months of meditation, the soil had become porous, had become more accepting of water, and it started to show signs of germination. So, okay, so the farmer thought, okay, this is good. And he set about planting his seed, and it was okay, but it was not really flourishing. So then the sisters said, well, look, why don't we empower the seed before we put it in? And again, he was skeptical, because even though ancient farming practices actually all incorporated metaphysical practices, but since the discovery of the germ and the discovery of the dollar, or the creation of the dollar, I think those things have been pushed aside for economic growth, economic profitability, and this kind of speed and quantity. So the farmer was a bit, he'd been used to using chemicals, and he was a bit doubtful about what it could do. But anyway, the sisters set up a program. So they would empower the seed during early morning meditation. Then they suggested, well, during the sowing of the seed, we should also have a spiritual consciousness. So then they would sow the seed with a particular spiritual consciousness. And then, okay, what do we do when we water the seed? That should also be with a spiritual consciousness. So they would establish practices, spiritual technologies, if you like, I like to call them that worked as an input, just like we use organic compost, we use water is an input, seed is an input, organic compost is an input. So too, metaphysical application is also an input. We can't take ourselves out of farming. You can't take the farmer out of the farming. So, and this is something that then developed. The farmer, the sisters particularly said, look, you are part of the agriculture. So you yourself have to become good in order to make the seed good, in order to make the produce good and the farm good. So then the farmers started adopting a vegetarian diet. They stopped drinking and smoking. They started meditating. Their relationships improved. And so it had qualitative and quantitative benefits. Now, I'd like to refer to some of the quantitative benefits. And Pete, if you don't mind putting the slide up, I just think this is really interesting. And I'm referring to, at the moment, to a recent article that's been published about yogic farming. So this is from a research program conducted about 8 years ago, but you can see, particularly in the middle, the carrots. You've got chemical carrots on the left, yogic carrots in the middle, and organic carrots on the right. And what they've discovered is that there's greater root germination, there's greater resilience to disease, and the crops are generally stronger and more nutritious than either the organic or the chemical. Sometimes with chemical you'll get a greater quantity, but it's purely in mass. In terms of nutrition, in terms of calories, in terms of energy, in terms of flavour, yogic food, yogic vegetables are really key. Thanks, Pete. Oh, and also if you just want to see like this lovely yogic farming family and the crops. So at a recent this recent study done, the yield of organic and yogic far surpassed organic and far surpassed non-organic and the control. So if we think about it as just another input, then we can appreciate that it's part of the farming practice. It's not an add-on. We have the farmer, we have the seed, we have the water, we have the land, and all of them together go to create a healthy farming system. So I'm just thinking, if we want to do a bit of a meditation commentary, I'd like to do a meditation commentary that some of the yogic farmers do, and it's about being a seed. So I just want you to settle where you are. And just bring your attention to the center of your forehead. Just imagine that you are there, you, the soul, the living being, as a living seed. Just feel yourself as this light, this seed, this tiny, silent seed of light. And you can also be aware of yourself in this temple body. This temple body made of earth, water, fire, air. And just imagine that the water element of your body just gently leaves and returns to the rivers and the oceans from whence it came. Just imagine that the air element of your body returns to the wind from whence it came. And the fire, the heat within your body becomes cool and leaves and returns to the sun, from where all warmth first begins. And the earth, the remaining earthen element of your body, gently returns to the land and once again becomes the mountains and the valleys. And so here we are, suspended, tiny seed of conscious light. And gently we descend to the earth. As we touch the earth, as I, the seed of light, touch the earth, I gently sink within that earth. And I go about a couple of centimeters down into the earth. So quiet. So still. So warm and comforting, this earth around me. And as I rest here, I start to feel this gentle rain upon me. This gentle trickling of rain. It feels good, that coolness on I, the seed of light. The warmth of my Mother Earth. The coolness of rain. And I feel this warmth coming from above. Oh, makes me feel bright. My mind brightens. I feel full of possibility. Still silent and radiant, but I feel the urge to explore this gentle calling to rise. For I, the seed of light, just reach above with my mind. Gently reach above the soil. I look out. Look at this wondrous land around me. My mind, in the form of a little green shoot, rises above the land. I can feel the wind. I know there are friendly people and animals. Someone is thinking well of me. I feel stronger. feel confident. I know I will be well. I feel vibrations of love and of power. I put my roots of light into the soil and I start growing strong and straight. I continue to grow up to reach the sun, feeding on these beautiful vibrations of love and power and care and potentiality, pure potentiality. I know I will reach my full potential. I grow strong and straight and tall, my roots firmly in the earth, reaching up to the sun. And I feel I have fulfilled my destiny. I am strong. I am bright. I am tall. I am steady. I am loved. Om Shanti. I wanted to do that because it's a different way of thinking. And I think this is the key with yogic farming. And a lot of what I've learned recently has been from Aboriginal Australian people. And I want to recognise some of those mobs, as we call them, respectfully. So I've been culturally adopted by a Waka Waka Woolly Woolly woman who has cultural connections with the Pitjantjatjara in the Western Desert, Uluru. And I've also learned from Gunditj Mara, Gunai Kurnai, and also 2 elders from the Wajibulak nations. And, you know, it's only recently that our thinking has become reductive. And I know I said before the discovery of the germ and the creation of the dollar, but I think it was like that. We discovered the germ and we thought, gosh, all the problems can be solved if we just kill this, and then everything else got relegated to old wives' tales or mythology. But, you know, these traditions have sustained, these traditions of mind matter, which the Western paradigm of science is just coming up to, have been around for a long time. And it's natural for us to do that. So with yogic farming, it's a great way to, first of all, change our perspective. We're used to seeing out there everything from our point of view. Even when we try and look at something from another's point of view, it's from our point of view. But with the Indigenous way of thinking, and I want to refer to a book called Sand Talk by Tamasin Porter, and maybe we can put it in the chat box. And this book is called Sand Talk, How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World. And he uses this beautiful analogy, Tyson, where he says one hand is a piece of paper, and then the other hand with the fingers spread out above it is the cultural view through which we look at everything. And in that book, he refers to the drawings that his people would draw on sand. And this is how they understood everything. everything was multi-directional and everything had multiple perspectives. So, for instance, when we think about north, south, east, and west, they don't have 4 directions. They have about 16 directions. They have up and below and side. And if you want to know what it means, if you want to know what it means to see someone from something from someone else's point of view, you have to become that someone. So this is why I wanted to do the meditation of becoming the seed and receiving that positive energy. Because in non-dualism, it's not that on one hand, everything is connected, but that doesn't mean that everything is the same. It's not that we lose our individuality, but what we do to another, we do to ourselves. So what we do to the seed, we're the first beneficiaries of that. So these farmers, sustainable yogic agricultural farmers, okay, they're empowering the seed, but the first one to receive the power is themselves. So they're the first ones to benefit. And so, and also if we imagine ourselves as the recipient, if we imagine ourselves as the seed receiving those vibrations, then I think it gives us a feeling or a flavour of what yogic farming is. Because we can understand it with the intellect, but it's a heart-based practice. So if we look only for the intellectual, then we miss out on the non-verbal. Again, in Aboriginal Australian traditions and many other traditions, we've all got our own earth traditions, actually. It's just we talk about Aboriginal Australia because it's more recent. We can see it and know it more recently. A lot of the Didiri is deep listening, a Pitjantjatjara word, I believe, meaning deep listening. There's a lot of being still, watching, waiting. Like there's no rush. Just wait. Wait for the season. Wait until the kookaburra tells you the rain's over. Like there's always something that will tell you. We live in a multi-species world, a multi-element world. And this is the practice of yogic farming. And I might outline the practice, unless, Gabrielle, you have some thoughts or questions or something like that. I thought I'd kind of outline what people can do
Yeah, no, it'd be great to hear a little bit more from you outlining what people can do. I know there'd be some keen interest in that for sure.
So a really good way to do it, and something that you can do at home, and I've found it very effective, is it works well with rice. You have 2 jars of rice. You put rice and water in one jar, rice and water in another jar, same jars, position them on the same windowsill. And with one, you give that jar vibrations of love and power and peace in whatever way is meaningful for you. That is really key for the sustainable yogic, for the metaphysical practices. It needs to be meaningful for the practitioner. So it should be meaningful for you. And the other one, you just leave. You don't do anything. And it's interesting to see what happens within a week. In my experience, what happens is that the one that's not getting any attention degrades far more quickly. The one that is getting love and positive vibrations and positive intention remains good for much longer. So you can do it like that. Rice and water in a jar is a really easy way to do it. You can also do it with plants, but it's a little harder to tell because every seed is different, but rice can be more similarly compared. So that's just something that you can do. And it's quite affirming, because when when you do that practice and see the effects of it, then we realize the power that we have as practitioners of spiritual technology. It's all Wi-Fi. You know, we have no doubt that Wi-Fi works, although sometimes our Wi-Fi doesn't work, but, you know, that's all information flying through the air as well. So, you know, it's spiritual Wi-Fi. It's what it is. It's information going from one non-physical vibration and traveling or manifesting elsewhere as that vibration and having an effect. It's such a great practice.
There's a little bit that's on that track. Maybe I could just pitch it now. It's saying, would that be okay?
Yes, definitely.
It's saying, I understand how meditation helped grow healthy crops in the fields in India. The farmers were actually in the fields with their crops. Could we influence the crops in India with meditation if we live in another country? So I guess
Definitely.
it's talking about how powerful is our practice of positive vibration, yeah?
Look, I don't think it's distance-based. There's a lot of evidence that remote vibrations work just as much as when you're close proximity. And so, yes, I mean, it's great to be in the field because then there's the full context. But if you're not in the field, you can imagine you're in the field. Just like, you know, with sports psychologists, they get people to imagine they're shooting baskets and with basketball, and the body experiences that they're actually there throwing baskets or whatever it is. There's, I'm sure, a more technical way to explain it, but there's good evidence that that kind of that remote meditation has an effect.
Wow, we could try it. And I love what you do with the you know, the rice and the water too. I mean, that's a lovely way to I guess to experiment, and if you're doing it yourself, you'll come to see just how well it works or not for you. And of course, that, you know, experience is a great form. It's a great authority, isn't it, to be able to see the difference? Yeah, yeah.
You can always adjust your practice that way too. If you're not having the effect you want, try something else. Actually, I had an experience once with Dr. Torsten Ludwig in East Germany. Now, even that, what a great name. So he was actually looking at the effect of mind on matter, and he had what's called a random event generator. So what that is a machine that you project your thoughts to, and the idea is to affect the line. So there's a line that travels across that's generated through the computer, and then there's like an arc that shows. Sorry, there's something going on downstairs. Okay, there's a line that you have to try and move, and then there's an arc, which is the arc of probability. And so I tried to move the line. First of all, I had quote unquote powerful meditation, and the line didn't move. There's like a green line that goes along the middle, and it slightly moves. It didn't go up or down or anything. So okay, so much for my powerful meditation. And then I tried something else. I tried kind of not meditating, not kind of having that intense focus, but just having general meandery, nice, positive thoughts. And that didn't work. Oh, okay. I'd meditated for 20 years or something at that point. I was getting concerned. So then what I did is I looked at this little green line. I thought, oh my God, that green line, it is so dear. It is like a little caterpillar. And I felt all this love for this green line, this little green line, as it was squiggling across the screen. It was like this little green caterpillar. And my heart became filled with love. And instantly, all these lights started going off, and the random event generator started making noises, and this line went outside the realm of probability.
Wow, wow.
So I'd influenced, but it was a state of love that did it.
Wow, look at that.
And that,
and very direct, wasn't it?
makes,
It wasn't abstract love, it was direct, like this is a little caterpillar, and it was very much on that, very
yes,
focused. Yeah.
yes. When we're immersed in a state, rather than thinking thoughts, which, I mean, in meditation we do all kinds of things, and sometimes it's good to, have full concentration, and we do a variety of practices, but it's this being immersed in moments of love, consecutive moments of love, is what made the line move. That had such a profound effect on me and how I meditate and how I understand sustainable yogic agriculture as well. Yeah.
I love the way it's so specific too. And you talked about the the social benefits. Can you elaborate on that? You did mention about the impact that it had on the farmer herself or himself. I'm not sure. The farmer. What about those around, or what other kind of social impacts? Because I understood at one point there was a high rate of suicide amongst the farmers in India because they were the seed they were given, they could only use it one season, they couldn't do much with it thereafter, and so on. And we were seeing a spike in suicide rates. Can you just talk a little bit about the impact of these the sustainable yogic farming and some of the social benefits from that post 2013?
Yes. Yeah, it was interesting. When I spoke to farmers, mostly what the female farmers talked about, because there were men and women both, they were the ones that tended to notice the difference, whether they were female farmers or the wives of male farmers. They were the ones that noticed that their mood was different, because in order to do the farming, the sustainable yogic farming, the farmer has to become a meditation practitioner and also has to adopt certain practices in order to have the mental acuity, I guess, or the heart acuity maybe, to have an effect on the crops. It was changing relationships within the home. It absolutely reduced farmer suicide rates in those particular communities. So yogic farming tends to operate among like 20 to 30 farmers. It operates in small groups because it operates farmer to farmer, which is one of the reasons for its success, I think, because it's not a top-down approach. It's led farmer to farmer, and usually it's led from farmer to cynical farmer because, they're like, well, I'm used to using chemicals, I don't know how, like having some meditation. But then they see the effects. Like another effect was, just to go back to the physical for a moment, was that the sugarcane grew much straighter and wasn't subject to pests in the crop directly, in the farm directly next to that one. The sugarcane wouldn't stand upright and became infested with an insect. So, and that also has an effect on the farmer because they feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. Farming is one of those things that you do. You've got to give something to get something. In a world where we've got push button everything, and you don't, even the light switch, you don't have to generate your own light. You just press a light switch. But agriculture will always be what you do, you get the return of that. So, I mean, imagine, no wonder there was a suicide problem. They're putting in seed, but as you say, bad seed that doesn't regerminate. They can't seed save. They're putting in chemical. At one point, they were using Coca-Cola because it was cheaper than had the same effect. So, change in the farmer, change in relationships, more cooperation within villages, reducing depression. People overcame their addictions as well because they're farming in a way that was meaningful. Some of the farms I went to, they asked me to please take off my shoes because this was considered
sacred.
It was so, they had such pride. So wonderful.
Oh, that's gorgeous, isn't it? Yeah. We've got another question coming in here, Tamasin. Could you tell me where you practice this on Australian soil?
Well, interestingly, at Yarra Valley, which is one of the centres in Melbourne, retreat centre, the brother looking after the farm there, because they produce, there's a crop garden and potatoes and seedlings, and he just asked me the other day if we could start practicing yogic farming there. So we are going to start implementing a proper study where we have a yogic farming plot and a control plot. We won't do chemical because we don't want to do that anyway. So it'll be fully organic, but one will be with the yogic input and one will be without the yogic input. So we will be starting that at Yarra Valley. There may be people doing it formally, but we hope to establish this as a formal study.
And of course, I mean, Australians can start it whenever they like, can't they? Like, if you're really interested in it, just by listening to this, you can get to understand what the essentials are and begin it yourself.
Indeed.
And experiment with it.
There's a website, actually, if you wouldn't mind putting the website in the chat. It's yogiketi.org. And I think it's an Indian-based website, but it's in English, and it has all the documentation, all the studies, all the practices. It's a very good resource if you want to begin somewhere. And I think there's quite a bit now online about it as it grows. And, to have 2 peer-reviewed studies now is excellent. And I think people are ready for it, because every industry has to change what they're doing and how they're doing what they're doing. Whether it's transport, whether it's industry, whether it's education, whether it's private business, agriculture is one of the big ones. And this is a great way to empower communities, to enrich people, to change people's, to get the best out of people, and for people to be the best of themselves, and to work small scale collaboratively and really have an impact. And
local stuff, it's good, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, it builds community. There's so many benefits, isn't it? You're building community. How do you see sustainable yogic farming in the future, Tam?
Look, I think it has a huge potential. I think a lot of things grow from the margins and become centre. You look at what it meant to be a vegetarian in the 1970s. It was a pretty wacky idea. Now, whole food plant-based diets, being vegan, is quite mainstream. So, but things start from the margins and then work to the centre, and it becomes mainstream. And I think that's happening just because it's not sustainable. I mean, in the true sense of the word, we cannot keep pouring chemicals on our soils and feeding the plant and forgetting about the soil. We get these big plants and the soil is barren. The plants have less nutrition than they can potentially have. And we need more nutrition, not less. We need more plant food, not less. But we need farmers to have good livelihoods and to be well in themselves and to create healthy, positive communities. So I think it's really got great potential. Yeah.
And I love the impetus might be, crops and to get a better crop, but actually it begins with you. I love that way of that it's not just about an object, it's about a connection. And the first connection is with yourself and moving out from there. And I love the way it breaks down that duality as well. Hey, look, I'd like to have a little look at some places in our world where we're seeing respect coming in big time for mountains and rivers. And Pete, if you'd like to put this slide on, you're going to see a photograph of a mountain and a river. And the mountain is Mount Taranaki in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and the river is the Whanganui River, also in New Zealand. And the question is, beautiful looking, aren't they? And the question is, what have they got in common? What is significant about these two beautiful pieces of nature, of the environment? I don't know, have a little think about that. What's happening there? Or why am I showing this particular slide? And I could have shown actually other rivers around the world too. I think there's a couple in India that have a similar status. And the answer is this, and Peter will put that on the slide in a minute, that these non-human entities have the same legal rights as a human being. So each has a legal personality in their own right. And what this means is if someone abuses or harms them, the mountain or the river, it's the same legally as harming the tribe. So you cannot pollute without huge consequence. So it's bringing on the sense of very deep kinship between nature and human beings, or the species of human beings, and seeing that, it's time to start really rethinking and renegotiating the whole way, and bringing in this element of respect that we have with our land. And Tamasin, that's something that you touched on earlier in your conversation with us. Can you say a little bit about that? What have you noted in that area? And you might have noted this in your work now in Victoria, the policy work that you're doing there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I work as a political staffer for Andy Meddick for the Animal Justice Party. He's the MP for Western Victoria. And one of the things the Animal Justice Party tries to do, and this is just to describe, obviously it's not a political thing, but one of the things that we try to do, and it's reflected in community sentiment, is to make the world a better place for non-human animals. Our laws are often behind our sentiment, and laws take a while to catch up to our sentiment. So at the moment, animals are property, and similarly, landscapes, rivers, they're seen as commodities and resources to be used at our whim. And it's so interesting, Gabrielle, you speaking about those landscapes and their rights as living entities, because they are living entities. They're living differently than we are, but who's to say what life matters more than another life? I don't feel it's meant for me to say at all. So, yeah, one of the things that we look at is recognizing that everyone is different. Species are different, but just like we have racism and sexism, there's also speciesism. There's the idea that there's one species that's superior, just like we thought there was one race that was superior for a little while, and maybe a gender that was superior. And based on that false notion of superiority, that means you can exploit others at your whim. But the more we find out about living landscapes from our Indigenous people, who have the knowledge more at the front of their minds than many of us, the more we see that we cannot live without these landscapes. We are interdependent. We interbe. And that's a beautiful expression from Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk. He talks about interbeing. We can't exist without the other. And similarly with other species, the more we find out about other species, the more we find out that they're more like us, not less like us, in terms of their ability to, in terms of their emotional worlds, their wish to play, work, love, express themselves according to their species. And we have to be careful. There's anthropocentrism and anthropomorphism, and they're two very different things, and I think people get them mixed up sometimes. So anthropocentrism is the idea that we are the human and we should be able to use others and exploit others as we wish, because we are superior and nothing else matters as much as we do. Anthropomorphism is thinking that by acknowledging the gifts and talents of other species, that somehow we're thinking they're human. They're not human. I don't at all suggest that that a bird is like a human. And actually, there's another book I'd like to put in the chat. It's called The Genius of Birds by Jennifer Ackerman. And, it's remarkable, the studies they've done on birds, the complexity, you know, the moral complexity, the intellectual complexity, the forward thinking, the kind of engineering brain of birds. Even in the book I mentioned before, Sand Talk, Tyson describes beautifully the echidna. The echidna has a much bigger frontal lobe than us compared to the you know, according to the size of our brain. So what does that say about the echidna? Do we say the echidna is superior to the human, or do we just say we're all here together? We are all interbeing. We all inter-are. We cannot pull out the human thread of the tapestry of this drama of life that we all live in. We are interwoven. What we do to another, we do to ourselves.
So much more healthy, isn't it? It just brings to my mind how deadly comparison can be. You know, we start comparing and then we move into frames of, you know, dualism, isn't it? Inferiority, superiority, and so on. Look, I'm going to push pause there for a minute and show a short video. It's called Want to Save the Planet, because it's quite timely to show this, and let's check in after the video. It's a short one, and continue our conversation, having absorbed some of the key messaging in this little short video. Want to Save the Planet.
Want to save the planet? Perhaps you recycle, practice a vegetarian diet, or watch your carbon footprint. That's great. But where does it all start? It starts with awareness. Thoughts come from the awareness that we hold. Consider the truism, you are what you think. Thoughts, like words, carry power. Hate, kill, suffer, murder, lynch, death, torture, war, rape, victim, ugly, useless. Versus love, help, care, heal, peace, purity, wisdom, truth, happiness, kindness, beautiful. They say if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're probably right. Awareness becomes thoughts. Thoughts become consciousness. Consciousness becomes action. Action creates an impact. Now consider the impact your thoughts have on the planet. Do you want to hurt, pillage, exploit, use, kill, burn, destroy the planet? Or do you perhaps want to love, heal, protect, grow, nurture, save the planet? If you think the Earth is a beautiful living system and our existence is only a part of this intricate balance, then it is. Then we will use her resources with greater respect. Kinder awareness leads to kinder thoughts, leads to kinder consciousness, leads to kinder action, leads to kinder impact. Impact triggers change. One person will share this thought with another, who'll share with another, who'll share with another. The more we think, the more we share, the bigger the numbers get, the greater the consciousness becomes. What started as one person reading this soon will become 100, and then 1,000, and then 1,000,000. The time to act is now. The time to act collectively is now. This creates an impact. Impact came from action. Action came from consciousness. Consciousness came from thoughts. Thoughts came from awareness. Want to save the planet? It all starts and ends with our awareness.
I'm sort of thinking of that video, that short, the key messaging in that video, and what you've been doing in sustainable yogic agriculture, that connection between consciousness in the context of sustainable yogic agriculture. It makes it very explicit, doesn't it, Tamasin? What were you thinking about that?
Yeah, it just makes me think, you know, we underestimate the power and the capacity of who we are as one being. There's so much, there's the idea, I'm just one person, what can I do? But again, it goes back to that interbeing. We're never alone. We interact with ourselves. We interact, but we interact with each other all the time, whether it's on the phone or in work, and we influence each other. We pick up ideas from each other. We're receptive to vibrations from each other. Look what an act of kindness can do. It can lift someone, and that lifted person then goes home and lifts up their kids, and those kids go into the playground and are different than they would have otherwise been. And, there's only one of each of us. There's no other Gabrielle. There is no other Tamasin. It's like we're it. That is it. So we are precious beyond belief, all of us. We are, each of us, precious beyond belief. And so I think when we think we're one, we should think, well, we're a million, because who we come in contact with during our lifetime. I'm 56 years old. I've come in contact with a lot of people in that time, and the possibility of bringing in a much better world through just my one life is greatly possible. And if we each take on that challenge, we don't have to stop. We don't have to solve all the world's problems. All we have to do is just live our life the best we can, live as kindly as I can at every moment, without exception, not just when it's easy, but just take on that task. And so to me, that's what that video showed. It reminds us that our awareness of who I am as a spiritual being and a human being, and when I come across others, whether they're human, whether they're different species, also a spiritual being in whatever species they are, to interact with everyone, every living landscape, every living being, with that sense of interbeing, we're here together. I really think that can change everything. And people think, well, not everyone, but some people may think, oh, that's a soft thing. You've got to, it's all about numbers. And I don't think it is, because that hasn't worked. I think it's in us. We can do it. Yeah.
It kind of started with us, didn't it? So it's got to come back to our responsibility as well. And it makes it so achievable when you think actually it's about my consciousness, my awareness, and the big impact that's happening all the time. In that sense, I think it makes it very achievable. And when I think that, COP27 is coming up and they're facing some major issues in a very global way as they, consider and negotiate in Egypt. In your view, what needs to happen to the COP to make it successful, Tamasin, in the light of the kind of research you've been carrying out?
Well,
big question, I know.
Well, it is a bit, but what I used to, the secret thoughts in my mind when I used to go to COPs when I was representing the UN for the BKs, I think we should get everyone out of the rooms, take off their shoes, cut off their ties and mess up their hair and get their feet in the earth. I think that would change everything. We go into these rooms that are totally divorced, they segregate us all, meaning, our conversation is not what it would be if we were sitting on country, as we say here in Australia. Indigenous people here, they say, if you want to talk to us, come and sit on country. It's got to be a different conversation. You can't have the same conversation under fluorescent lights, in suits, drinking out of styrofoam cups or whatever it may be. So I actually think that has to happen, a version of that.
Your thinking changes dramatically, doesn't it, based on that kind of environment? I mean, I was at the Small Island Developing States United Nations conference in Samoa. It must have been 2013, something like that, 2014, 2015. And look, it was remarkable because it must have been by about day 3, people were out of their suits. They were in appropriate dress for Samoa. And what a change in the conversation. And the fact that they had to go from the airport and they weren't in limousines or even, they had to drive through the standard road in Samoa, through many villages, and all the villages were out showing their particular speciality. And it was so much heart in it. And it was interesting because when we were talking and doing workshops on these sorts of things, it made the front page of news, and the World Bank was on page 10 because they totally understood that, this whole aspect of, of bringing in the heart into the conversation. And it was notable by the end of it how much people had moved just by being in a very different environment from, the closed room, the large city environment, but coming back into nature where we need to be if we actually want to really contribute to changing our planet for the better. Yeah, it was quite remarkable. Another question coming through here, Tamasin, is there a role for the divine in creating a sustainable future? What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I think so. What I've learnt from some Aboriginal Australian people is that there's many more than the 5 elements. They talk about 14 elements, and the first element is the creator. And then there's sun, see if I can remember them, sun, moon, earth, rain, lightning, wind, tree, air animal, land animal, water animal, divine masculine, divine feminine, and child. So these are all the elements we talk about. We've got the 5 in a kind of Western paradigm, which leaves out most. But the first one is the creator, and then even the child element brings it back full circle because the child is the creator of the future. So I think most people have a sense of a creative energy, whether we see that one through a philosophical lens or a religious lens or an earth-based lens, whatever lens is meaningful for us. It's just, I sometimes think of it like a diamond. You've got different facets of the diamond, but the diamond is one thing, but we view it through, maybe it's like Tyson said again, you view it, you've got the paper and you view it through a different cultural, religious, historical, philosophical lens. Whatever's meaningful, we're also different. How do we even compare at all? One of us to another one of us. We have to connect with the creative energy, that creative spirit, in a way that's meaningful for us. And for me, I believe the creative spirit is also light, is also a seed of light, is fully adorned with all powers and gifts and beauty, and it is the ocean of love. And that love is available to us at a moment. And by re-establishing that relationship, we can heal whatever needs to be healed within, and we can heal whatever needs to be healed without, and we can bring about a better world. Yeah.
Let me just get off mute. Here comes another question. Look, you're passionate about the environment and animal welfare. How do you sustain yourself, particularly when it can be very gloomy and disappointing and stressful?
Kangaroo hugs.
Oh,
yeah.
Lovely.
I'm fortunate to live some of the time in a place where there's a wildlife shelter, and we look after. There's a woman there, Pam Turner, who looks after animals full-time, rescued wildlife. And it's nature and animals that help me deal with the difficulties faced by nature and animals, actually. And I don't see that as separate from my spiritual practice. I did for a long time. I saw my spiritual practice as separate from my body, as separate as like I had to go beyond. I don't feel that anymore. I feel like it's not this or that. Again, we go back to that. It's not here or beyond. It's here and beyond. It's the two together. I am here. I'm in this earthen body. I can't, unless I die, the soul can't leave. I leave, that's what we call death. I'm integrated. I'm influenced by the body. I communicate through the body. And so, yeah, I mean, that's how I see it now.
Yeah, so out with dualistic thinking. You know, get rid of the either or and in with the and.
Yeah, I think so. That's it hasn't worked for us very well. We siphon things off. Even at the UN, when we were looking at the MDGs before we did the SDGs, one of the great criticisms was silo thinking. We looked at the MDGs as separate siloed goals, and it didn't work.
So what do those acronyms mean for our audience?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
The Millennium Development Goals, which were the goals we wanted to achieve at the year 2000, and then Sustainable Development Goals, which were, because we didn't achieve the MDGs, we thought we better get some SDGs and try them. But one of the critiques has been the compartmentalization, and that we have to look at things as a whole and integrate.
Yeah. So good. Look, this whole aspect around living simply and living sustainably, what are some of the ways, in your view, that we could live more simply? Some really practical things that we could live more simply.
I think the world has so much stuff in it. We don't have to buy retail. I mean, we don't need to buy anything. I mean, I think that really think before we buy something, because every thing has a story. We see it in the shop, we buy it, but it all comes from nature, and there's a story about workers and factories and transport, and I also think, I mean, I have to advocate for a plant-based diet, because an animal-based diet is destructive. I mean, apart from the impact on other beings, when you think of the breeding, the rearing, the watering, the insemination, the antibiotics, then the housing, and then the slaughtering and dismembering and packaging and transporting, it's hugely resource intensive, hugely, much more than eating plants directly. Most of the crops we have go to feed animals who go through that process before they're killed and end up in our supermarkets. So I think that is also, essentially a vegan diet is a peasant diet. It's village food. You eat what you grow. It's essentially that. And I mean, another way is, I mean, it's those simple things. It's reusing things. It's composting. It's, I mean, it sounds silly to say using, not getting another bag. We just have to say no. People will give us a bag and we take it, but we just have to say no, because in place of the one we've taken, another one will be made. Like, we're part of a continuum. And that interbeing attitude, I think, really, when we feel we're part of a collective, then our role in the collective, in my experience, we become much more cognizant of, and then we know the impact we're having. Otherwise, if it's just me, myself, and I, we don't really think about it. But that attitude changes through a change in awareness and through practices like yogic farming, where we have the possibility of applying spiritual technologies into a practical kind of environmental activity, seeing the results, getting that confirmation of those results, changing as a result, and then becoming different, and then that changed awareness coming out again as a practitioner.
Yeah, it's lovely. Look, thanks, Tamasin. I'm wondering if you could lead us into a second meditation, like wrapping all this up together and taking us on that journey so that we can feel empowered to live more simply.
I'd be very happy to.
Lovely.
Thanks, Gabrielle. So we'll take this opportunity to touch on all the elements that give us this world in which we live. The creator energy, in whatever way is meaningful for you. Just to give thanks for that energy of creation, without which neither you nor me would exist. And as we are here, I, the soul, honour the elements of the sun, this element that provides warmth, growth, light, provides day, contrasting with night, and gives colour, shape and form to everything. And I honour the moon with her cool light gives rest to the forest, gives a contrast with the day, and provides a cool energy, affecting the tides and waters in our bodies and on land. I thank you, moon. And the earth upon which we stand, which gives support for our very lives, which is the home for all growing things. This earth that receives sun, water, seed, and it provides us with nutrition, that provides us mountains and valleys. Thank you, earth. And the earth receives the water of the rain that comes as clouds, the water in the oceans, the rivers. I, the soul, thank you, rain, for you exist also in my body. And the element of lightning, charging the earth, providing minerals to the earth, rebalancing, energizing, fertilizing, bright and powerful, spontaneous. I honour you, lightning. And the wind that cools everything down, that moves seed from one place to another place, that provides relief and calm. My dear wind, you give me my very breath which is life. I thank you greatly, wind. Thank you. And through the wind, the seed landed in the earth and became a sapling and a tree, a tall, gracious tree, providing shade, providing food, providing shelter and wonder, a playground, a home. You wondrous trees, the elders of the forest, the guardians of our planet, providing oxygen for all of us. I honour you, O great tree. And out of your branches flies the air animal, the bird, the eagle, the cockatoo, the finch, soaring above, getting a different perspective on the world, soaring, gliding. Feeling the wind beneath my wings, beneath your wings. I thank you, my brother, the air animal. And then the land animal, the echidna, the kangaroo, or whatever other species in different countries. The kangaroo reminds me to take care of myself, to look after my clan, to rest when it's time to rest, to play when it's time to play. Thank you, land animal, my sister, my kin. I thank you. The water animal. I acknowledge particularly the eel. The eel, known for its cellular memory. The parents have their young, and then the young just know where to return. They know the place of their ancestors. Like the eel, we also have a connection to our own earth ancestry. I thank you, eel and water animal, for keeping the waters clean, for ensuring there is life in the waters, and for reminding me of my own earth ancestry. The divine masculine, the energy that provides and protects. Thank you. The divine feminine, the energy that nurtures, communicates, collaborates. I thank you. And finally, the new creator, the seed of life in the form of the child. I bow to you, O child, O future creator, forthcoming generation. I, the soul, the seed of light, I honour all you 14 elements. Om Shanti.
That was a really refreshing way to recap all the key things that you've shared with us this evening, Tamasin. So thank you for that meditation. I'm going to re-listen to it. There's a lot in it. Thank you for that. Yeah, very beautiful. And Tamasin, I'd also really like to thank you for, for your courage and your innovation and your insight, for taking up a research topic on a fairly dismissed field of inquiry, that being the impact of vibrations, and in your instance of cop growing, but it moves more widely than that, the impact of vibrations on everything. And you gave it agency, and you brought it to international attention, and and thereby, by placing it front and center as a method for co-creating a better and sustainable world. So our big thanks to you, Tamasin, for that piece of work and for your ongoing commitment to sustainability and a better world and an integrated world. Our thanks, our blessings, and Tamasin, our love to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being. It's great to be here tonight with you all. It really was. It was a joy. Thank you.
Yeah, great having you with us, Tamasin. Thank you so much. And our viewers, you might like to browse our online bookshop, Eternity Inc., which has got a full range of books on self-empowerment and spirituality, always at not-for-profit prices. And be sure to check out the chat box. Tamasin's referred to 2 books at least that you might want to look at, and a website. So make note of that there in the chat. And if you'd like to subscribe to Open Your Eyes to the Universe to receive monthly updates, then please email us at special.events@au.brahmakumaris.org. And with the COP27 approaching, we invite you to send special good wishes, because we know the power of that, to our environment and all living creatures. And there's a 30-minute meditation commentary with gorgeous visuals to take you into the experience of deep appreciation, deep gratitude and love, and guardianship for our shared global environment and all living creatures. It's called With Love for Mother Nature. It's a guided meditation commentary, and Jan will place that in the chat box for you. You might want to share the meditation with friends and family and do it together. In fact, you might like to invite your friends and family to do the meditation together, and wouldn't that be lovely? And finally, I'd like to tell you about our next episode of Open Your Eyes to the Universe. It's scheduled for Saturday, and it's the 26th of November, starting at 7 p.m. AEDT. And we'll have 2 special guests, and they'll be sharing a conversation about authenticity. So join us on Youniverse next month on Saturday, 26 November, 6 p.m. We'll be closing out tonight, or as we close out tonight, we're going to leave you with a video on it's called Creating a Peaceful Footprint. It's a very empowering kind of video, so something for you to consider as we close out tonight. Something we can all consider if we want to live in a better world, and if we want to really live with harmony and respect for all living creatures and for nature. So until we see you again in November, may you live simply and sustainably so that others can simply live. And in this way, we can create and co-create a better world. Om Shanti. Want to create a better world? Want to live with security, belonging, peace, justice, understanding, and respect for all people, all living creatures, nature, and the environment? Want to create a peaceful footprint? It starts with my consciousness. Peaceful consciousness leads to peaceful thoughts. Peaceful thoughts lead to kind words. Kind words lead to respectful actions for myself, for all people, for all living creatures, for nature and the environment.
Om Shanti.
We may have come from many different countries and cultures. Within our hearts, I think we hold the same vision of a better world, of greater security, peace, justice, understanding and respect for all people. Houses can be built with the bricks, but it is what is in our hearts that builds a lovely home. Once we have seen in the eye of our mind that such a world can and should exist. Make it happen. Make it happen.
We can make it happen when I stop taking and consuming more than I need and start giving and receiving. When I stop reacting to others and start responding and serving. When I stop measuring and transacting and start collaborating and sharing. When I stop competing and start cooperating. When I stop depending and start being interdependent. That's when I create a peaceful footprint. And our world becomes a place of giving, receiving, responding, serving, sharing, collaborating, cooperating, a place of interdependence. Individual action creates collective action, which lead to collective impact. My peaceful footprint creates a global peaceful footprint. Want to live in a better world? It begins with my peaceful consciousness and my peaceful footprint.